There's a lot of misinformation out there about what proper squat technique should look like. If you want to know what it should look like in your body, check out this video.
Let's go.
Hi, I'm Dr. Moses Bernard. I'm a chiropractor and mobility specialist, and I'm here with Coach Chris here today to talk about squat technique and building squat technique from the bottom up based on what your body is actually capable of. But before we get started, make sure you click on the pinned comment below for the Bodyweight Beast program. So, when it comes to squat technique, what a lot of people will say, what a lot of coaches will say, is that a lack of ankle flexibility is going to limit your ability to squat properly and to squat deep. And while in some types of squat you do need a certain amount of ankle flexibility, a lot of the times the ankle is the scapegoat of we blame everything to do with a bad squat on not having enough ankle flexibility. So we're going to take a look at Chris's ankle flexibility. We're going to see what squats he's capable of. But before we do that, I want you to understand and appreciate that you don't actually need any ankle flexibility depending on the squat you're trying to do. So if we take Chris and we bring him into a really wide powerlifting style box squat, and we bring him just past parallel, you'll notice that his ankle is at 90 degrees. So he didn't actually need his ankle at all to do a squat like this. So come back up. So again, if we look at this angle, so squat back down one more time, the amount of ankle flexibility he needs is negligible to squat in this position. Okay, come back up. If we bring your feet together, so feet are touching, yep. So if he were to squat all the way down from here, and I know he's not gonna be able to do it because most people can't, but let your heels lift off the ground.
Okay,
yep,
sure.
Yep, perfect. So if we look at how far out in front of his toes his knees are in this position, you can see, imagine the ankle flexibility he would need to be able to do a squat this deep from here, okay? So he doesn't have that, but if you did want to squat this deep with your legs out in front of you, this is the amount of ankle flexibility you would need. You would want your knees to be able to get a good 7-8 inches out in front of the toes. So we saw a squat variation that needs a whole lot of ankle flexibility, a squat variation that needs no ankle flexibility whatsoever. Let's see what Chris is actually capable of, and then we can see what squats are on the table for him. So I'm gonna have him come into a lunge, so his leg's gonna be towards me. So depending on how he likes to squat, depending on the shoe that he likes to squat with, this is going to determine how much ankle flexibility he's got. So let's say he likes to squat in a totally flat shoe, so like a Chuck Taylor or something like that. In that case, his heel and his toe are gonna be on the same level. If he's in the shoe he's in right now, or running shoe, you can see the heel is a little bit higher than the toe. So his ankle's already pitched a little bit forwards. If we think of a more traditional Olympic lifting shoe, usually it's a lot more pitched. So where that shoe is going to determine how much or how far forward the ankle can go. So let's say this is the shoe that Chris likes to squat in. So if we keep his heel down, we allow him to drift his knee forwards, you can see that his knee does get a few inches out in front of the toe in this shoe. So if he wanted to squat in this shoe, he can choose a squat variation that requires this much ankle, which is going to be most squat variations. So when it comes to the ankle, his ankle isn't really a huge liability when it comes to his ability to squat deep. Bring your back leg forward a little bit. Perfect. Now, this is the amount of flexibility that he's got. Let's see that he can control that. So Chris, what I want you to do is try to maintain that angle between your shin and your foot and bring that foot up off the ground. Perfect. So you can see it all stayed pretty rigid. So some people, they might have this much flexibility, but when they go to lift, it drops a little bit. They're not able to control and keep that full angle closed down. But he can control all of it. So he's got a pretty good amount of flexibility. When he goes to lift, he can maintain it. So his ankle isn't really a huge liability when it comes to his ability to squat deep. All right, so we've checked off what his ankle can do. So if, let's say, he didn't have a lot of ankle flexibility, well, he's now stuck with just the wider leg variations. Since he's got some ankle flexibility, that brings some of the more forward leg variations onto the table. Okay, but that's only one piece. We haven't looked at the knees yet, and we haven't looked at the hips yet. So now let's see what his knees are capable of. All right, so Chris, I'm gonna have you lie face down on the table with your head away from me, so your legs are gonna be towards me. So now we're going to take a look and see what his knees are capable of. So I'm going to pull his heel towards his butt. We're going to look at his knee flexibility. So kind of maximal knee flexibility would be his heel touches his butt. So if we're thinking of a more Olympic lifting style butt to ground squat, we want to have full knee flexion. We want that butt to be able to basically graze up against the heel, okay? If we look at him, you'll notice nowhere close. And that's okay. If we look at his ability to bend his knee, if I pull his heel towards his butt, you can see that it stops a good foot of distance between the heel and the butt, all right? Now, if he wants to be a world-class Olympic lifter, this is something that we'd want to address, okay? If the sports that he's doing don't require this full degree of knee flexion, well, maybe this isn't that big a deal, okay? So this is his passive range. I'm gonna let go. Let's see how much of it he owns. So I'm gonna let go, try to stay there. Even less. So now we look at this angle. So if we look at the plane between his shin and his thigh, you can see that that angle is just a little past 90 degrees. So for him, the squat depth, even though his ankle wasn't necessarily that limited, the amount of knee flexion control that he has is. So just because his ankle can get there doesn't mean his knee can. So if he's wanting to squat deeper and deeper and deeper, adding more ankle flexibility isn't going to be the solution. In his case, the knee flexibility might be the missing link, all right? Now, because a squat is a bilateral movement, having flexibility on one side isn't enough. We need to have it on both sides. So let's see what's going on with the other hip, or other knee, my mistake. So we bring the leg in, heel comes to his butt. He actually has a little bit more flexibility on this side. But it doesn't matter if he's doing a bilateral exercise because he's going to be limited by what this leg can do. I'm gonna let go, try to stay there. He's got more ownership on this side as well, okay? So let's say he's doing something single leg. Let's say he's a soccer player and he's a penalty kick specialist. He only kicks off this one leg. Well, it might be okay that this leg works a little bit different from this one. If he's trying to do bilateral things, if he's trying to squat heavy, deadlift heavy, well, we want to make sure both legs are capable of the same type of thing. So at this point, we've looked at his ankle flexibility, we've looked at his knee flexibility and what he's capable of. We're now going to look at his hip flexibility and see what he's capable of. So maybe flip over and lie on your back. So now, if we take his knee and pull his knee to his chest, okay? So we're taking the knee out of it. We don't really care about what the knee's doing right now. We just care about the hip. So if I pull his hip towards his chest, as I'm doing that, I'm looking to see how close to his chest does his thigh get, all right? And if we look at the angle, you'll notice that his thigh doesn't quite touch his chest. If I let go and he tries to stay there, it pulls away a little bit as well. So if we're now looking at building a super deep squat for this guy, well, ankle flexibility, check. Knee flexibility, not quite. Hip flexibility, not quite. So now let's take those three things together and now let's build what his squat is going to look like. So Chris, I'm gonna bring you to the ground. So we're gonna do this looking at a lunge first. So we're just gonna take one leg on the one side, we're gonna see what it can do, and then we're gonna build a squat from there. So I'm gonna bring you back down into the lunge, okay? So we saw what his ankle is capable of, all right? If we look at what his knee is capable of, I want you to think about trying to pull your butt towards that heel. Perfect, okay? So if we remember from the table, this angle was pretty much the end range of what his knee was capable of, okay? If we remember what his hip could do, this end range was about the end range of what his hip is capable of. So if we now take his other leg and bring it forward, so you're gonna bring your other leg to kind of that same type of position, okay, and find your deep squat. Yep. So if we look at Chris's deep squat, we can now see that what we saw on the table is showing up in his squat. We see his ankle flexibility, he's using all of it. If we look at his knee flexibility, he doesn't have quite as much, so he's not using quite as much. If we look at the distance between his upper body and his thigh, not using quite as much. But that's okay, because this guy has been training for a long time. He's found ways to train that works with his body. He's taking advantage of the fact that he's got really good ankle flexibility, not as much in the knee, not as much in the hip. So this is a squat that works for him. If we're to look at my body, I'm kind of the opposite of Chris. So I've got really good hip flexibility, I've got really good knee flexibility, I've got not so good ankle flexibility. So what my squat might look like is this. So you can see my thigh is pretty much touching my chest, my butt is really close to my heel, but the amount of shin, or how far my knee is out in front of my foot, it's actually sitting behind it, because I don't have that much ankle flexibility. So my full depth squat requires almost no ankle flexibility because I don't have it. I stole it from other places, so what I'm working on in my body is getting more ankle. Chris has the ankle flexibility, so the things he would work on is his knee and his hip. So these are two very different athletes. We're both squatting very, very deep, but doing it in entirely different ways. So it's not as easy as saying, just stretch out your hips or just stretch out your ankles. You want to actually know what each piece is capable of and build your squat from there. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you learned some things about things you can do to get your squat working better. If you like the video, make sure you click like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you check out the pinned comment below for the Bodyweight Beast program. Again, I'm Dr. Moses Bernard. Thanks for watching.